morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today, and I do mean great. I actually particularly like the topics for the day, and I am in an unusually great mood. So
Ooh, I love that. Okay, well,
we'll see how long it lasts.
I have two things to say.
Okay.
One, I must give a shout out to my daughter and her two best friends. They asked me to do this on TV today and tell them, Kinsley, Ayana, and Zoe, good morning to you guys.
Good morning.
And second, your hair looks really nice.
Oh, thank you.
I love this. Tell me about this haircut. This is new. I mean, you don't switch it up too much, but this feels different. Yeah, am I?
It's more or less.
It's shorter?
Well, it's shorter than usual.
Yes, okay.
You look nice too.
Oh, thank you. I don't look like comfortable like last time
I think we're kind of doing green and blue, so.
Okay, we match.
You win in that
I know you love matching
description.
Besties. Well, coming up on Rising, tensions over Greenland appear to be rising as President Trump is threatening to impose tariffs on Europe if a deal doesn't get done soon, and the EU considering a so-called bazooka option of their own.
Plus, the DOJ is putting former CNN anchor Don Lemon, quote, on notice after he appeared to enter the church subject to an anti-ICE protest and covered the incident, and perhaps that's why I'm in such a good mood.
Oh, man. And new polling shows that a staggeringly small number of Americans are satisfied with the amounts of Epstein files released so far. But first, Robby, what is in your radar?
Well, mainstream media mouthpiece Kara Swisher, a journalist known for extremely negative and hostile coverage of tech figures like Elon Musk and others, is really, really mad that the billionaires of Silicon Valley have figured out one neat trick to avoid paying California's proposed massive wealth tax. They're simply going to leave the state. And I, for one, find it amusing that Peter Thiel, Sergey Brin, David Sachs, Larry Page so easily foiled the Democrats' plot to confiscate 5% of their wealth, but Swisher, she's furious. Here she was raging at the billionaires and claiming they owe it to the state of California to submit and personally pay off the state's considerable debts. Take a look.
I have of two minds of this. One is you made and I said it to one this weekend. I said, you made all your money in California, you ungrateful piece of shit. You could figure out a way to pay more taxes, and we deserve the taxes from you, given you made your wealth here. The second thing is, yes, there are different ways to do this, but the length of time it would take and the kind of vehemence you would fight whatever happens means nothing would happen. So why don't we just do shock and awe at this point? Because you don't seem to be, availing yourself to thinking that you owe your state something more. Which they don't think that at all.
We deserve the taxes from you. That's what Swisher thinks. My question, who is we? I feel differently than her, and I expect most people watching this do as well. Let's state our values plainly. See if you agree. No one is entitled to the fruits of another person's labors. No one deserves someone else's money. No one who earned their fortune legitimately through their own hard work should be morally or legally or philosophically obligated to fork it over to the state. That doesn't mean the wealthy should pay zero taxes. Of course, the government needs to collect some tax revenue to pay for the upkeep of the things it owns, roads, parks, etc., and to maintain the services that are the rightful purview of the state, courts, police, fire, and so on. We also accept in modern society that we don't want the needy and the infirm and the elderly to starve or to go without medical care, and so we have broadly agreed as a society that the rich will pay frankly more than their fair share in order to provide for the welfare of the less fortunate to varying degrees, and we debate those all the time. But when a state grossly mismanages its own funds, despite taking in $270 billion a year in tax revenue, it's not the responsibility of people who already cough up billions of dollars to come to California's rescue. Swisher has the relationship between California and the tech entrepreneurs backwards. It is not California that has made the tech sector great. It is the tech sector that has made California great. The state has benefited from their wealth, from the successful companies that they've started, from the people they've employed, from the technology they've created. Yes, it's a nice place to live. The weather's pretty great. I've been there. But the weather's nice in Florida too, and the regulatory policies, I think, are even nicer. I think deep down that's what really annoys the Kara Swishers of the world. The revelation that under the capitalist system, successful people don't need the government to help them, they just need it to leave them alone. The European Union is obsessed with strangling its tech sector in the crib, and so they have no major successful tech companies to speak of in Europe. Just leave business alone, and you get huge success and riches, and then sure, you can use some of that money, you can take it and fund public projects and also take care of the poor. But you can't simultaneously demonize the wealthy and then expect them to bail out a bankrupt state. But for the progressive left, it's taken as a fact that you didn't build that. The government did. Remember when President Obama confessed that this was his entire outlook?
Somebody helped to create this unbelievable American system that we had that allowed you to thrive. Somebody invested in roads and bridges. If you got a business, that you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
Sorry, Kara Swisher, you didn't build that. Elon Musk did. David Sachs did. Larry Page did. And if you want to confiscate even more of their wealth, then they will build it somewhere else. Somewhere I suspect the Republicans are in charge.
Listen, I'm pro-business.
I know you are.
I'm
Something
more
I like
on,
about you.
I'm
You're
more
a
on the,
businesswoman yourself.
Thank you. And I'm more on the side of Gavin Newsom here, Governor Gavin Newsom, as opposed to like Rogan. I know that he is pushing this forward. I think that we shouldn't penalize people for getting to the top of this American dream, right? We are telling people you can do it, you can become anything, you can become a billionaire here, but then you're getting taxed in a state that's already heavily taxed.
Kara Swisher hates them. She holds them in
I understand.
contempt.
Her,
she
Elizabeth
radiates
Warren, a lot of people.
Contempt.
I don't think wealthy people are saying don't change the rules altogether. I think they're saying don't change retroactively taxing me and start to really make me comb through all my finances.
It's desperate.
Uncomfortable.
It's looking at the state, looking at its balance sheet, figuring it's screwed and frantic. What can we do? What can we do? Okay, we can take more money from them. It's not well thought out.
But even though I support entrepreneurship, I think like sometimes the wealthiest Americans, you know this, Robby, they pay a lower effective tax rate than people that are middle class, like nurses and, you know, regular people. And so I think in California, specifically when so much wealth has been built in the tech center, people could do better to pay their fair share. And we know that every wealthy person finds a way around it. We heard the old stories of offshore accounts and finding ways to not pay taxes, giving to charity, doing whatever you want to write off all these expenses so you just get the money right back. But I think if you don't want the 5% wealth tax, I was trying to figure out what else can you do? Because I'm not on the side of people who have regular 9-to-5s and are middle class pay more of the effective tax rate than wealthy people. I do think they should pay their share, even though it's a lot more money of what they're paying, and people in middle class should not be paying higher. So we could try to equalize those capital gains taxes so that they're paying the same amount as ordinary income holders, right? That's one thing. We could end the step-up basis loophole that I saw, which allows inherited wealth to not be taxed entirely at all. And so this is, again, if you're just passing on to your dad's company and he's a billionaire and you become a billionaire by default, okay, you've inherited that. You can pay your fair share of taxes as a new owner of that business, right? Aren't these different ways that in California, as the rich continue to keep their family lineage rich for decades, that they can continue to give back without avoiding a lot of these loopholes that rich people tend to avoid? I mean, we can figure out how to balance it. They're trying to take care of social services in California, which is important. You said we have an obligation to take care of our elderly.
It's not all social services, though. Sometimes it's the pensions of employees, of state employees. The people pushing this wealth tax, it's government unions. It's not, the union for some private company where it's the auto manufacturer and the employees of the factory are unionized to make sure the conditions are not, unsafe for them. Okay, I understand unions. These are people protecting pension systems and employee benefit systems that no longer exist in the private sector because they're too exorbitant. They're from a time period where you retired at 65 and then you died at 75. People live a lot longer, and that's great, but we now have to take care of people longer and longer and longer. Doesn't make sense. Propping up a system that that the private employees, it's better than what private employees have. That's what it goes into. Those kinds of benefits for government employees, many of whom I believe positions could be eliminated in the first place. So that's what, it's not that people are going to go hungry on the streets. It's that, there are going to be fewer protections for teachers' unions or police unions. If you're of a liberal, you can be upset about that too.
I mean, a lot of people in California, not a lot of people, they've tried this before. In 2003, 2004, they tried to pass something similar and it failed. And so I don't know that this is going to go through. I think it's causing a lot of ruckus. But if you see people already moving, I think that should be a sign and indication for California that's a problem. But Gavin Newsom has been clear that he thinks people are leaving other states in droves as well. He's pointed that out on podcasts recently. So he said, don't just pick on California, even though they're doing this.
But I love doing it. Well, I'm not picking on the state. I feel bad for the people who live there.
Coming up on Rising, tensions between the U.S. and Europe over Greenland seem to be heating up. We'll be right back after this. President Trump revealing in a leaked message to the Norwegian Prime Minister that there may be a personal reason for his escalating attempts to acquire Greenland.
The president apparently writing in that message to the prime minister, quote, "Considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel any obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America." He went on to again question Denmark's claim to the island and blasted NATO, writing, "I've done more for NATO than any other person since its founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland." The prime minister was quick to point out that he has explained to Trump multiple times it's the independent Nobel Committee that awards the Peace Prize, not the Norwegian government.
Now, that letter comes as Greenlanders staged the biggest protests in recent months against a U.S. takeover. Several European allies have also sent military forces to the island. Over on this side of the pond, the letter sparked a wave of outrage from President Trump's critics. Former Rep. Adam Kinzinger writing on X, "Guys, Republicans, it's time to move Gramps into a home. Let's adults govern again." Author Shannon Watts echoing that, writing, "This is what the 25th Amendment is for." And while New Jersey Senator Andy Kim acknowledged the, quote, unhinged and embarrassing nature of the letter, he went on to warn Trump is doing lasting damage to our global position, which will harm our ability to keep America safe, secure, and prosperous.
As for the European Union, they're reportedly considering the implementation of what they call a trade bazooka to deter Trump from pursuing Greenland. The bazooka is a set of policies designed to deter bullying from major trade partners like the U.S. or China. It would allow the EU to curb the imports of goods into its market and put restrictions on foreign investment and also intellectual property rights. That could have a significant impact on the U.S. as trade between the U.S. and the Union account for almost 30% of global trade in 2024, nearly $2 trillion in total.
I was laughing so hard at the memes that came out of this weekend when people were laughing about what it means that he's gotten the Nobel Peace Prize hanging up in his office. They said it's like people dropping off their Grammys at the White House or their Stanley Cup or other awards saying, well, we gave it to you. And the Nobel Peace Organization is like, no, not acknowledging that. It's still Machado is not yours. So that is just its own thing. And he's obsessed with this award. And to tell a whole entire country's leadership that you are now penalizing them for a decision that a private committee made that they did not make because you still want an award is top level. I mean, even for President Trump, that's top level pettiness. Yep. I don't like that. That's where we're coming from with an ally. And the way that we've historically in this last year treated people that are our allies, Canada, saying we wanted them to be the 51st state, antagonizing them, now Greenland, and antagonizing them over what stemmed from a Nobel Peace Award. I mean, that's not something that you want to do to your allies so much that we have European leadership sending over military troops, boots on the ground and camouflage in Greenland to show a force against the U.S. So now we're fighting with our European allies, like in theory. It just doesn't look good or feel good.
Yeah. Look, I think viewers know that, I am the last person to have a kind of Trump derangement syndrome or to think he's crazy or senile. I think that's all nuts and not helpful at all. And I defend the president when I agree with him, and often I do, and particularly on foreign policy, I agree with him. So all that said, I don't get this at all. It's first of all, the decisions about Greenland should not be based on his personal sense of offendedness that Norway did not give him a prize, that in the first place they have no ability to independently award him because it's not the government. A. B, again, he's saying, well, now I'm going to think just in U.S. interests. So you weren't thinking in U.S. interests before. You were thinking about whether it would be nice to have an award. This does not reassure me as someone who would like to be in support of your foreign policy that decisions are being made for the right reasons. I think Greenland, I want to have stronger relations with Greenland. I think if Greenland wanted to be part of the U.S., we would welcome it. I think I agree with Trump in some narrow sense that Denmark has no automatic claim to the land. If the people of Greenland want to be either independent or part of the U.S., then that should happen. But from what I can tell from the referendums done, they do not want to be part of the U.S.
And the protests.
So, well, the protesters could be not representative of public opinion. But what I understand from public opinion is they don't want to be part of the U.S. We can continue to negotiate and discuss in good faith. We should do that in ways to strengthen our trading relations with Greenland and with the European, with NATO and with Europe. And I am fine to use the threat to get them to give us more favorable terms. You know, I've supported, for instance, J.D. Vance complaining about the German authorities and the British authorities and the European Union writ large about their tech policies, which are so unfriendly to our companies. And don't do that. You want us to give you money for defense, and you're gonna fine our companies for free speech violations that we don't recognize, because the way we do things in America is we allow free speech. I'm happy to have all those battles. I don't see how we can, but this is embarrassing, and this undermines our position to say that this land should be ours because we've just decided it.
And also, everyone's
it's getting us into very difficult
murky waters. And I think, you know, when the president's throwing things around like, I'm going to offer $1,000 a person or some money offering to citizens there to see if they want to override the government, I think that we're creating chaos for no reason, even so much that J.D. Vance and the president met with leadership from Denmark, and they left the meeting on the Denmark side saying, yes, we opened some options on the table to think about how we can find a solution for this. So basically saying we didn't come to an agreement, but we're going to keep talking. And Trump's administration left the meeting and said, we're in technical talks, this is a quote, of acquisition of Greenland. So they're like, what are we talking about? We didn't say that you're in technical talks to acquire us. It's just confusing. And we also already have an agreement with Greenland that we can put boots on the ground. I know Amber was arguing that some of the facilities over there that are the U.S. bases are getting a little bit decrepit. And so that's part of the concern of President Trump, that they won't be as effective. Well, we can put money and time and effort and resources and people there to fix
and that would all be a good idea.
Facilities.
That would be
but we don't have to own the place.
It shouldn't fall to China. Right. We should have a good relationship with it. And frankly, if we did own the place, it would be a problem because of our protectionist Jones Act, which screws over Puerto Rico. We have this ridiculous law from the 1920s that it was to protect the domestic shipbuilding industry, that internally to the U.S., it affects what areas of the U.S. they can stop in, and it makes U.S. to U.S. Shipping much more expensive. So ironically, it would be harder for Greenland to ship to the U.S. if it was technically part of the country.
Really?
So
it's even going to cost us more money?
No, it would cost them more money. It would ruin them.
Okay.
We would have to,
economy.
to be clear, we should abolish the Jones Act. Every time Puerto Rico has a natural disaster, they suspend enforcement of it. But we should just not do it.
Get rid of it. Okay, well, I learned something new today. I didn't know about this Jones Act.
It's a real bad one. Up next, Bill Maher blasted the Golden Globes for not nominating Joe Rogan in the Best Podcast category. Don't go anywhere. Comedian Bill Maher blasted the Golden Globes for not nominating Joe Rogan in the inaugural Best Podcast category.
In the latest episode of his Club Random podcast that featured Dana Carvey and David Spade, Maher said the Globes only nominate, quote, super woke stuff. Here he goes. Let's take a listen.
It was glaring that Joe Rogan was not nominated.
For Best Podcast?
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of popular, and, you know.
It is known.
It is known.
He's absolutely brilliant at what he does.
And he's very good at what, exactly. So if you're going to have an inaugural podcast category.
And you don't have.
It just speaks to living in the blue sky bubble.
Yeah.
But get out of your bubble, you know?
Maher then argued why it's difficult for him to defend his fellow liberals. Let's listen.
I want to be one of you. I am one of you. But you're just so hard to defend because you're just so smug. And this town is the epicenter of the problem. It really is.
How many more liberal Democrats are there? There's you that say what you say.
Not a lot.
There's a guy in Des Moines who runs a shoe store.
I had dinner with Andrew Schultz last night.
Okay.
I think he's one of them.
Among the nominees for Best Podcast shows were Good Hang with Amy Poehler, Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard, Alex Cooper's Call Her Daddy, and NPR's Up First podcast. Good Hang with Amy Poehler won the award.
Wow.
Why are you laughing? NPR's a prestigious organization.
No, I know, but it actually good to Bill Maher's point, those are all ideologically similar. I guess I don't know Dax Shepard or...
What about Call Her Daddy? That's not really... Call Her Daddy's a really
liberal.
Good... It's liberal because she's a woman just celebrating womanhood. Yeah. That's liberal?
Yes, correct. Exactly. Point made.
Okay, look. These
There's
awards...
nothing for the male podcast watching demographic, which is the hugest demographic.
Well, the bros that watch the podcast got the whole election won by President Trump. They got him right in office, so be happy with
where's our
livelihood. Listen, these awards are never objective. They're always subjective. Somebody always has an issue. But I will say, if you just look at the numbers of Joe Rogan, what does he have, like 190 million views per month?
Trillion, bajillion.
11 million
they don't have a
views per
word
episode.
that exists to...
Yeah, he's breaking all barriers. So I looked at the merit. I'm like, what do they actually judge these off of? And it starts with downloads and views. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't defend you then.
Yeah.
I can't defend you with, because his set is like not the most brilliant thing I've ever seen. It's fine. No shade to this, to Joe Rogan set, but it's not like, oh my gosh. So if they're judging off like artistic design of the set or whatever and everything that goes in, they're not. They're judging off numbers to start. And then they get into a whole bunch of other stuff. And so it's just subjective. And some part of me feels like they are like icing Joe Rogan out. Because you can't like ignore the man that has been credited with swaying an election.
For some reason, they think that's not artistically would merit the kind of thing they want to award. Well, there's Theo Vaughn, there's Tim Dillon, there's any number of there's Andrew Schultz. There's so many other podcasts. Like, find one that you think is artistically. These are what people are watching. Again, it's not to award the most popular thing. They're doing critically acclaimed, but I think they're still being a little partisan blinders on for what they think is critically acclaimed.
How do you feel about something as old school as an award show now honoring, award show like the Golden Globes, now honoring podcasts? No, it's kind of folding. You said that there's always like this isolation of like old school, new school, thinking I'm better than you.
I mean,
They're incorporating it into the show.
Come around.
Wouldn't that make you watch if Joe Rogan or any of your favorite podcasters was nominated? That'll make that whole audience of people who are in this digital streaming
watch the
age.
Golden Globes.
Well, somebody might now.
Yeah.
Somebody who's on the cusp of like grandpa / I like YouTube might watch it to see if. I mean, Call Her Daddy has millions of views. That's the one that I know pretty well.
I was, again, to speak well of Joe Rogan, I caught clips of Ben Affleck and Matt Damon on.
I did too.
And they were speaking, all credit to them, they were speaking very about changes in the movie industry in a very self-aware, I want to praise them actually, because they were talking about what they don't like about Netflix and streaming and how they're forced to, from a script writing standpoint, you have to, everybody's distracted, they're looking at their phone, so you have to summarize the plot over and over again for people who are just not paying attention, and how stultifying that is creatively. But then Ben Affleck was saying, but he doesn't want to just like criticize what the new thing is and say it used to be better because there are advantages too. It was very thoughtful, their remarks on how streaming has changed things, and I just wanted to appreciate them for being.
And Joe, you got to give Joe Rogan credit for getting people.
And he
to
brings that out
the
of
space.
people.
Yeah, the space to talk, 3 hours to talk, plus being have a good conversationalist. So can't deny it. New polling shows that the vast majority of Americans are unhappy with how the federal government has handled the Epstein files. I'm going to have more on that in my lens.
Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Well, your favorite topic, Epstein. So at this point, the Jeffrey Epstein story isn't just about a disgraced financier or a sealed set of files. It's about trust. And right now, most Americans do not have it. A new CNN poll makes that painfully clear. Only 6% of Americans say they're satisfied with how the Trump administration has handled the release of Epstein-related documents. 6. And nearly half of Americans, 49% to be exact, say they're dissatisfied with how the Trump administration has handled the release of the documents as well. And perhaps the most telling part is this. 67% of Americans believe the government is intentionally holding back information that should be public. That's not partisan noise. That's a credibility problem. Because despite the Justice Department releasing thousands of documents under pressure from Congress, officials admit those represent less than 1% of what they actually have. Less than 1%. Meanwhile, the DOJ has acknowledged potentially more than 1 million additional Epstein-related documents are still under review with no clear timeline for when or even if the public will see them at all. This matters because Congress didn't politely request transparency, it mandated it. A bill passed overwhelmingly in the House and unanimously in the Senate required the full release of Epstein documents by mid-December. Not only has that deadline come and gone, but the administration has also failed to explain why so many files remain redacted, another requirement written directly into the law. And that's where the frustration turns into suspicion. President Trump has grown increasingly irritated by the focus on Epstein, particularly as the midterm elections loom. But political annoyance doesn't override public accountability, especially when the documents that have been released include photos of Trump alongside Epstein, images the president says reflect a social relationship he ended years ago, which he maintains involved no wrongdoing. Former President Bill Clinton, we have to mention that, also appears in multiple photos, and his team has accused the administration of selectively highlighting those images. Again, no allegations of wrongdoing, but the selective transparency only fuels the perception that this process is not neutral. And perception matters, because while the administration insists more attorneys are reviewing files, FYI, there are roughly 500 people involved in reviewing these files now, Americans are still being asked to wait. Meanwhile, outside Washington's marble halls, the public conversation is not slowing down. A group calling itself the Secret Handshake put up a massive installation on the National Mall, a 10-foot replica of that birthday card allegedly sent to Epstein bearing Trump's name, featuring a crude sketch and the line, "Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret." Trump denies writing it and even sued the Wall Street Journal over the report, but the symbolism is hard to miss. Now, this is not about art or spectacle. It's about a government that promised transparency and delivered delays. When Americans across party lines believe information is being withheld, not protected, not responsibly reviewed, but intentionally held back, that erodes confidence in institutions already hanging on by a thread. So at the very least, Robby, if you can't agree that Epstein, since you got me brought into this Epstein mess in the first place,
this is
and
my fault.
now you're backing away from it, saying it doesn't matter, because that poll also showed that a lot of Republicans are like, even people who spoke out, Lauren Boebert, I believe, kind of like, there's nothing I can do right now. I want this to see it through. It'll happen when it happens. I have to worry about the economy. Like, this is her response to people. It's like people don't believe the government. And since we already both agree that...
Not believing the government is...
Yeah, we agree that people in the government are not doing enough. Effectiveness is at an all-time low. We agree on a lot of those things. So when they can't do something as simple as releasing documents to allow transparency for Americans, I mean, what is the holdup? Even though the pictures came out, I said Bill Clinton should testify. He should get up there. And President Trump should release or provide a deposition. Like, yes, these all should happen. I don't have a problem with this. I'm not defending Bill Clinton. I think people want to understand how somebody who is this gross of a person that has been convicted was allowed to get away with this for so long. It's not about the victims. It's not about the people that you think may be performative and that we don't have information on that have gotten millions of dollars. For me, it's about the fact of who allowed this to happen, what money was being spent.
Who allowed what to happen?
Who allowed Epstein to run amok for all these years without him? You know, it was a blind eye. I know, but a blind eye was turned for years. And there was indications that many people might have seen or known this when he had famous friends and when he had rich friends and government friends. And so we need to understand the process.
It's not as mysterious as people think. He was prosecuted, and the evidence was not as compelling as people might think it seems to us now. Because of the testimony from the victims not being reliable enough in many cases. So he got what seems like a lighter kind of prison deal, but now that it's been explained to me is very characteristic of the situation where the evidence is weak.
Oh, this is just so normal to you. Everything, you went from riled up about it to just like, oh yeah, this is par for the course. I just can't accept that.
Well, I accepted new information when it was given to me. I was like, this seems weird. And then my friend Michael Tracy, who I've interviewed on Rising many times, walked me through, who is he's not looking to cover for Trump. He's not a conservative. He's not a Republican. He's just someone who believes in due process, which is something I believe in too. And so I looked at it more closely and was like, oh, all right.
So what about the rest of the people that would like to see this information released?
We can release...
I mean, it was a law that says they should release
all the information
so
because people are not satisfied with the information they have, and he agrees with that too. We need to release the information. We need to know more about who was involved to set people at ease about the potential, I think, foreign connections is the main thing. Mm-hmm. The idea that he was an intelligence asset for a foreign government is disturbing, and it is true that Ghislaine Maxwell, through her father was connected to a foreign intelligence agency, so there's a lot that looks odd at a glance, but close up starts to already become clearer. And I'm also convinced that people are never going to accept any amount of new information because people have been tricked into thinking or been hyped up into thinking by podcasters into thinking into some of the administration people,
okay.
Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. Dan Bongino could not satisfy the hype that he created when he got into government and is now leaving government. So he continues saying things that he knows on the other side that his claims didn't hold up, and he could not manufacture evidence for the claims he was making before he was in government, and now he's going back, so he doesn't have to. He's fixed that he had his eyes closed, and then he opened his eyes and could see, and was like, oh, it doesn't look anything like what I thought. Okay, I'm going to go back to closing my eyes. That's basically what he did.
Pam Bondi, don't forget.
Yeah,
about
all
her.
those people. Well, she doesn't know anything, but they tricked themselves into thinking they were going to find evidence that enemies of President Trump, the Democrats, Bill Clinton and others, were themselves complicit in gross underage sexual violations. In the same way the Democrats are now convinced they will find evidence of that with Trump. And guess what? Neither side is going to find evidence that their political enemies were involved in a pedophile ring, because they weren't. They just weren't. Sorry. Sorry you convinced yourself that.
I hope that's the case. But that's why if you release 1% of the documents and everyone is looking for all the information that you said would be released and now is mandated by law, people want answers as to why so much is heavily redacted of that 1%. And then furthermore, why it's not being released. Like, there's 500 people. I looked into this yesterday. There's 500 different lawyers and people working on combing through these documents. Like, what's the timeline? If there's not a realistic timeline to happen in mid-December, then what is that new timeline? You should still tell people. You can't just sweep this under the rug. I know it's not going to be the number one issue for the midterms, but there's still plenty of people that were riled up about this that you said are never going to be satisfied. Well, they're certainly not going to be satisfied with 1% of the documents.
I think there's more to learn about from a financial okay, the intelligence angle, which I said, his tenure in the Virgin Islands and his relationships to powerful people in charge there, his relationships with banking associations, and sure, his ongoing conversations with people, Bill Gates, Steve Bannon, Stacey Plaskett, there's Larry Summers, there's 4 of them that span the political spectrum. So this is not trying to get Democrats or trying to get Republicans. There's 4, and there are a couple others that are still communicating with him after his release. Stacey Plaskett, Steve Bannon communicated with him within, the final years of his life. Mm-hmm. They were texting with him. So that, yes, we can learn more information about that. But you're going to find embarrassing things for those people that should be publicized. You're not going to find that they're trafficking in pedophilia, those people. That's too sensational a claim.
All right.
Next up, Don Lemon is on the DOJ's radar after his coverage of an anti-ICE protest in Minnesota. Stay with him. Don Lemon is being put on notice by the DOJ after he documented a group of anti-ICE protesters in St. Paul, Minnesota, who entered a church on Sunday morning and loudly interrupted the service.
Take a look at this video from the service.
Renee Good! Renee Good! Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
The protesters were reportedly under the impression that the church's pastor was working with federal immigration enforcement. Lemon, for his part, said he had no affiliations with the protesters and was simply trying to report on the latest developments in Minnesota following the shooting death of Renee Good nearly 2 weeks ago. Here's part of the video from the protest.
So the protesters are confronting church members and leaders. They have stopped the service. A lot of people, a number of people have left. There are some who are still sitting here. So right now it's kind of mayhem in here. And there are some folks here who are praying. We're here just chronicling and reporting. We're not part of the activists, but we're here just reporting on them.
Lemon's denying any affiliation. He didn't just stop. I mean, it didn't stop the DOJ from identifying him as one of the agitators.
Harmeet Dillon, the Justice Department's Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, confirmed on X that the FBI had been activated to investigate the incident and said this on Benny Johnson's podcast following the incident.
We have a presumption of innocence in this country, so I want to preserve my ethical duties here. But let me just say that, he's a journalist. He was a journalist. I don't know what he is now, but journalism is not a badge or a shield that protects you from criminal consequences when you are part of a crime. And I think the videos show how close he was to these folks.
Okay, well, guess what? When you're a journalist or when you are a reporter, you get close to the action. So
Okay,
I
but
don't.
you can't
No,
trespass
she
in
didn't.
church.
He didn't trespass. He
What do you mean he
video
didn't
recorded.
trespass?
He video recorded. Church is an open forum, like where you can come pray. It's open for everyone. He went in there with a camera and recorded and said, "As I'm seeing protesters are doing this," you heard his voice explaining play-by-play, like a sports announcer, like Dick Vitale, what was happening in there. So I don't understand why people would say that he's part of the protest. Did you see him with a sign?
I don't know whether
he
he was part of the
the
protest or not, but he was not. Well, okay, but you can't be recording like you can't in church. You have to be. You can sit in the pews and listen to the preacher.
So no one ever records church? No one ever goes in there with a camera? I mean, I've seen cameras in my church.
Okay, I don't know whether he was.
This is not against the law to record church.
Okay, it was against the. Okay, what about the protesters?
The protesters did their own thing. He said he followed a group. He was already in Minnesota. He followed a group
what are they doing?
to where they were going. To
what
the
are
protest.
they even doing?
Okay, let me break it down.
Why is this church responsible for
Let's go.
Renee Good?
I'm glad you asked that. So Pastor David Easterwood, he's allegedly serving as the ICE field director in Minnesota, right? He would be the field director of an entire ICE running organization, and he's also a pastor of this huge church. And so people are there saying, okay, well, excuse me, sir, how is the same person preaching the good word of the law, Christian man, also the field director for ICE here, and you've seen the indications, but you're not saying that this is a terrible thing that we've seen a woman die. You're not preaching the good word in that way. If you understand the Bible, Leviticus 19:13, love the foreigner as you love yourself.
Those people,
why is he not preaching that?
Have no right to educate him on his faith or
yeah,
to
but
enter
also
his
maybe
church
you
or to
shouldn't.
interrupt
Maybe you
him.
shouldn't
They
be
have
a
no right to do
pastor
that.
if you preach loving thy foreign
Well, maybe they
as you
should
love
be
yourself.
protesters if they're still using the hands up, don't shoot slogan, which is false and a lie. That's from Michael Brown Ferguson. It has been debunked, definitively disproven in a federal DOJ investigation that it is a lie, that he did not have his hands up. That is not true. It is false. So they don't know what they're talking about. They're interrupting they're on private property, interrupting a religious service that has nothing to do with the events in Minneapolis.
The leader of the service
Don Lemon
allegedly
is
has to
interviewing
do
people
everything
in the
to do
midst
with
of the
ICE.
service.
The leader of the service has everything to do with ICE, allegedly. And so Christians in Minnesota,
no, there
are
the street
Christians
outside his home or outside the church. You can't just storm into the church,
There are Christian
interrupt it, and
groups-
shout a slogan that is false.
And there are Christian groups in Minnesota that are actively protesting ICE tactics. They're warning neighbors. They're part of these groups.
Good,
that are
and they have
whistling.
every right to
All
do
right,
that. I
so they're
support
saying,
them.
okay, which type of Christian are you, Pastor Easterwood? What type of Christian are you? They're asking, if you look at Matthew 25:35, I welcome a stranger as you welcome me. What type of Christian are you? Which Bible are you studying? Because you can't be the director of ICE and not condemn that we're seeing some of these actions happen, and also be the person that welcomes all foreigners, but also you're leading a church. They're just trying to figure out, how do you know
Why
these
should,
people
but
weren't...
what right do they, who don't even... I don't know who this group is, that they can say, we're not religious, but we think according to your values...
What makes you say they're not
something else.
religious?
Well,
What makes you say they're not religious? We don't know who these protesters are.
All I know is that they're shouting a slogan that is false, and they're violent. They're trespassing on private property.
You think that the
and should
Department
be-
of Justice should charge Don Lemon? Is that what you're saying, for a video recording on his phone? You think that's appropriate?
I don't know enough information about whether he had knowledge that this was going to happen ahead of time. So he deserves due process, and I support free speech. So we'd have to see. Now, he is confused about this, though, because I saw it. We didn't play this clip, but there's video of him interviewing, I think it was that pastor, some other figure of significance in the church, and saying, but they have, and he's interviewing the person is complaining about these protesters being here, and Don Lemon says, but they have free speech rights, do they not? My dude, they don't have free speech rights to enter private, again, we get very confused here. Free speech, the First Amendment protects you from the government on public property or in your own property from the government stopping you from speaking. Free speech does not mean on someone else's property or in someone else's newspaper or on someone else's social media site that you can say wherever you want and face no consequences from the owner, the property owner, the editor of that thing.
I agree.
I can't barge into your apartment and
I know. I agree with you
Lindsey.
100%. So I just want to know why all the January 6th protesters and rioters were part in then. If you agree with that mindset, and if your Department of Homeland Security or Justice Department is now threatening Don Lemon and this small group of protesters, then why the same administration pardoning January 6th rioters and protesters that actually were violent and not just chanting words? You can't defend that.
I
know. I'm just asking.
I haven't defended it.
Okay, so then I wouldn't want them threatening Don Lemon. And surely, this is I'm using it twice, but surely if you look at Nick Shirley as a citizen journalist, then surely you can look at Don Lemon as a citizen journalist who actually understands that he needs to get information and facts.
Shirley didn't break?
He didn't break in,
violate
but you look at him
private
like a
property?
citizen journalist and you respect it. You say, oh, his reporting was so good. But Don Lemon is in there telling you, look what's going on. I'm seeing the protest.
You're saying if Don Lemon was with the J6 people ahead of time and knew they were going to go into the Capitol.
He said he didn't know.
And then he goes into the Capitol with them, and then he's interviewing people. He's interviewing a scared AOC and saying, but they're using their free speech here.
No, if Don
that
Lemon,
would be pretty preposterous, would it not?
If Don Lemon was like any other news agency that has video of that day, I'm sure the reporters and journalists didn't get arrested. There were tons of them down there because that's how we have footage in-house right here.
The footage we have from inside is not from journalists.
No, but we have some from outside from journalists. Yes, we do.
Outside, they're not doing anything.
And people were already there.
Outside, the protesters have the right to be
there was a march
just
outside
like the protesters outside the church would have the right to be there.
Look, the same way that Don Lemon was in an area and saw that something may be escalating and followed that, the same way that journalists outside the Capitol could see something was escalating and follow that. Why do you think the journalist is implicated? But why do you think a journalist is implicated for being around some chaos? It doesn't matter if they went all the way inside or to the front door. Like you're recording what could turn into peaceful protest or chaos.
I don't think any journalist did go in, and I think they could have and might have been charged had they done so, right? I mean, journalists are not different. Journalists do not have special different First Amendment or free speech rights or protesting rights or whatever. It's the same as everyone else. Our speech is protected to the same extent. There's no special certificate you have as journalists.
Luckily, people in Minnesota just said words. They didn't attack anybody. They didn't hit people with objects. Luckily, they said words. So tell Trump to look at the situation and look at January 6th and see how he likes to move forward.
All they should be charged with is trespassing and nothing else. So I'm consistent here.
Up next, Governor Josh Shapiro says former VP Harris vetting team asked questions regarding his connection to Israel. We'll be right back with you.
Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, in his new memoir, alleges that the questions asked by Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate vetting team during her 2024 presidential run were heavily focused on Israel and made him a bit uncomfortable.
According to the New York Times, in his memoir titled Where We Keep the Light, Shapiro writes that Dana Remus, a former White House counsel and member of the vetting team, asked him if he had ever been an agent of the Israeli government.
Shapiro writes that he responded that the question was offensive, to which he was told, well, we have to ask. Shapiro, who is Jewish and an outspoken critic of what he saw as anti-Semitism on college campuses during the Israel-Hamas war, wrote that he faced skepticism of that record during the vetting process.
Per the new memoir, Harris asked Shapiro if he, quote, would be willing to apologize for the statements made, particularly over what he saw happening at the University of Pennsylvania.
Shapiro said he responded he wouldn't, adding, quote, I believe in free speech and I'll defend it with all I've got. Most of the speech on campus, even that which I disagreed with, was peaceful and constitutionally protected. Some of it wasn't peaceful.
Mama.
Yeah, this was a major point of conversation on social media. Look, I might surprise you with what I had to say. I think I surprised some of my followers because I like Josh Shapiro a lot. I think he was by far the best choice, way better choice than Tim Walz for VP. Of the plausible 2028 candidates of the Democrats, he's probably the one I like the best, I think makes the most sense. I actually did not think there was anything wrong with the questions they asked him, and this seems excessively whiny to me. They're saying this is, so he has said previously, and I don't know whether this is true, but he had said it at one point, what he studied abroad in Israel when he was a younger person, and that they did kind of service work, and it was not for the military, but it was like on a military base. I have tried to verify to the extent this is what he's claimed. So given that, I don't think it was inappropriate to ask if you have ties to the Israeli government, just as, Tim Walz should have been asked if he had ties to China, because he's visited China, and there's nothing wrong with asking that. It's not because he's Jewish, it's because he visited Israel and was involved in this thing. And I get a little annoyed when there's an excessive saying everything is anti-Semitism when that's a reason, because Israel was a Achilles heel for for Biden and Kamala in the race. So I don't know that he's fine to dislike her and dislike their VP vetting team and morons to have let Tim Walz make it through the finish line. But I just didn't see what was wrong with that personally. It seemed whiny.
Part of this seems like I understand why he and Kamala wouldn't have worked well as a ticket. Remember, there was like a conversation about
maybe they
who was
wouldn't
more
have.
of the president. Like, it seems like there's a bit of an ego here on both ends, right? Because her book claimed that he was trying to overstep even in the early stages of the process, which is why she didn't go with him. He said she's a complete liar, just trying to sell books. You'll remember in December, they were kind of going back and forth. She was on the talk shows. He was just saying, like, everything she said about him in the book, he was like, had answers to. So I don't think that they would have meshed well together. So
I mean, they didn't mesh because he's a star too. And she
exactly.
didn't want
You can
to
have
be,
two stars.
You can.
Well, most people usually, I mean, Trump allowed J.D. Vance to do a lot. But when you think about like Obama, Biden was just like chill in the back. You know, you think about Bush, Cheney had a lot of power, but was still in the back. Bush was the face. Like, with J.D. Vance, he's very outspoken, doing a lot more campaigning, forward thinking. But Trump is not afraid of J.D. Vance. He knows that he runs the party probably. I think Kamala, being the new candidate, wasn't as comfortable as President Trump
we just have
probably
to
is right
concede,
now.
though, that she made a bad choice. And Hillary Clinton, I don't, what's his name? Tim something? Who? Tim Kaine, I kid. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with it, but he was not an exciting choice.
Tim is the Democratic choice.
And she needed more. You know, if she'd picked Bernie Sanders, she probably would have won.
I think that Shapiro is going to run for president, like you said, and I think he's trying his best to completely distance himself from everything that was Kamala and Biden so that he can run completely on his own record. We know that the other people that are throwing their names in the hat have either worked for the Biden administration, like Pete Buttigieg. Kamala specifically has worked with Biden. So, like, explain a lot of this to us, because she didn't do a good job, like, separating herself, because she didn't want to step on toes, understandably. So I think Shapiro's trying to say, hey, I'm the outsider that doesn't have the drama of California. I don't have a wealth tax hanging over my head, and I'm not being petty with the president. Mm-hmm. I might be the best candidate for the people looking for a moderate person. But there's this whole other argument that people need to lean all the way to the left to match the MAGA energy. So I don't really even know what the next step for Democrats are.
I'll tap the sign again. He's the best candidate because he's the popular governor of the must-win state.
And
that is what makes him the best candidate. You guys get, like, there is no strategy to win without Pennsylvania and to some extent Michigan. So you gotta play to those states. You just gotta do it. And one of these times, the Democrats will
maybe he'll pick Kamala as his VP. Maybe he'll pick Kamala as his VP.
That's like literally what happened on the TV show.
That does it for us on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way all day today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel so you don't miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen on the go, you know we're available anywhere you listen to podcasts. See you tomorrow.